We are currently working with a handful of clients that are struggling with their Infor CloudSuite implementations, and in many cases, we're helping them recover that. So one of the common questions we get from clients and others in the industry is Infor CloudSuite broken, or is there something else going on? I'm going to answer that question here today. My name is Eric Kimberly. I'm the CEO at Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And we have several clients right now that are implementing Infor CloudSuite. And in some cases, those clients are struggling. And they've hired us to come in and remediate and recover the projects to get them back on track. And so when we're going through these remediation projects, clients will often ask, what's wrong with Infor? Why is this such a broken implementation and why are we having so much trouble? It must be something with the product. Well, it's really not the product itself in most cases that's causing problems in what we've seen in the industry. It's the way it's implemented, and that's what I want to talk about here in today's video. Now, if you'd like to learn more about general lessons from ERP implementations we've been involved with, not just Infor CloudSuite, but SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and other ERP systems, I encourage you to read our book called Lessons from 1,000 ERP Implementations. It shares with you 20 of the lessons we have from having helped over 400 different companies through their ERP implementations. You can read that book for free by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. The first reason why some Infor CloudSuite implementations are struggling is because Infor as a company is more of a product company. They're not an implementation firm. Now, this is true for a lot of software vendors. There's several software vendors that mainly focus on software development. That's what they're good at, and they're usually not as good at implementing. But I'd say it's potentially even more true for Infor, largely because they don't have a huge professional services group, and they also don't have a huge ecosystem of third-party partners that can help with implementations. It's certainly robust. There's certainly a lot of options out there, but it's not as robust as some of the other ERP vendors and providers in the market, which again is not necessarily at all related to the product. It's related to the support resources that are available to organizations out there. Now, on top of this, you look at the types of organizations that are typically implementing Infor. Typically, companies implementing Infor CloudSuite are upper mid-market. These are companies that they're big enough that maybe they could be implementing SAP or Oracle or Microsoft Dynamics, but for whatever reason, either because they're not quite that big or just because they want a more flexible alternative, they end up choosing Infor CloudSuite. So that right there puts a lot of pressure on Infor as an organization because they have to be able to support this more complex upper mid-market. And then here's the real important nuance here is that the expectation of upper mid-market organizations that deploy Infor CloudSuite is that oftentimes they think that because they're not implementing SAP or Oracle, for example, they think that Infor is just going to be a lot easier. And in some cases, they think it's going to be easy to implement. And the reality is it's not easy to implement. I'm going to talk more about why that is later in this video, but it's not because the technology is flawed or faulty. There are other secondary nuances that lead to organizations to think that. But that's important to recognize first is that Infor is a product company. It's focused on the upper mid-market. It's a good product. We've seen a lot of successful Infor implementations. And what I want to do in the rest of this video is share with you some of the other reasons why we see companies struggling with their Infor CloudSuite implementations. Another reason why some Infor CloudSuite implementations are troubled is because Infor CloudSuite alone isn't going to solve your business problems. It is a great technology. They've done a lot of innovation. They've invested heavily in R&D, and we have a lot of manufacturing and distribution types of clients that have been successful with Infor over the years. But the problem is Infor, just like every other ERP vendor out there, is not a silver bullet. It alone won't solve your problems. It's not going to solve your business process issues. It's going to give you a tool that could help you improve your processes, but the technology alone isn't going to change your business processes. The tool alone isn't going to address change management and potential human resistance to change. Infor, as I mentioned before, is good at building products, but they're not necessarily a change management consultancy. And for that reason, a lot of organizations don't address the change management aspect of their implementation. And by the way, you probably don't want your software vendor providing change management support even if they offer to. There's also the reality that Infor and other ERP systems are rarely the single answer that a company needs for their digital strategy. Typically, it's going to be the core of your digital strategy, but you're still going to need other third-party systems to round out the edges and to complete the entire picture. And this is especially true with the architecture that Infor CloudSuite is built. And I'm going to come back to that here later in the video, so be sure to stick around for that. And then another example of how Infor itself isn't going to solve all your problems is if you look at the overall data migration. If your data is dirty, if you don't have good data, if you haven't cleansed the data and mapped it appropriately, and you try to move it over to CloudSuite, you're going to end up with a failure on your hands, not because there's anything wrong with CloudSuite, but because the inputs into the system aren't what you need it to be. So these are just some of the examples of how Infor alone is not the silver bullet that you might think or want it to be, nor should you expect it to be. But the reality is a lot of organizations think that it's going to solve all their problems. It's just important that you recognize that Infor CloudSuite is one tool within an overarching digital strategy and transformation. One of the common challenges we see with Infor, which is a blessing and a curse, is that Infor actually has a very flexible ERP offering. They have a number of different ERP solutions that are really centered around Infor CloudSuite, but you also have subsystems within that, like Infor M3, Infor Sightline, Infor LN. And on top of that, they've also created an integration tool called Infor Velocity, which all these things combined create a lot of flexibility, a lot of open integration possibilities. It allows you to take advantage of AI and other features and functions that they've spent years developing. But the problem is it gives you so many options and there's so much potential there that it can be hard for organizations to consume that. Oftentimes we find that the most flexible systems in the marketplace are the most difficult to implement, not because the flexibility is bad per se, but because people start to think that because I can change the software to do what I want it to do, I'm going to change it whether I should or not. And this creates resistance to change, or it can be a symptom of resistance to change where people think, well, if I could just change Infor CloudSuite to do what I've always done for the last 40 or 50 years, no matter how broken that process might have been or how difficult it is to justify that process, they still may want to get Infor to do what they used to do. So we have to look at the double-edged sword of flexibility and power, because Infor has a lot of that, but when it comes to the implementation, if you don't manage it well and you don't have the right project governance and the right change management and the right process improvement framework in place, it can get out of control pretty quickly. So what's the path forward? Should you continue down the path of Infor CloudSuite? Should you cancel the project? Should you go find another system provider? I'd say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you chose Infor CloudSuite or you're leaning towards Infor CloudSuite, there's probably something there. There's probably a reason why you're wanting to go down that path. And by the way, we're not affiliated with Infor. We're not affiliated with any software vendor, so we don't really care whether you stick with Infor CloudSuite or not. But what I would say is I would look very hard at whether or not you have a product problem or a product fit problem, or whether you have an implementation problem. If you have an implementation problem, which is most likely the case, and in most examples we see, that is the problem, then you've got to look at what are we doing wrong? How can we get a better program management in place? How can we better handle change management? How can we better define our future state business processes? How can we handle learning and adoption better so that people actually know how to use the software? How can we build a clearer architecture to take advantage of Infor Velocity and some of the other tools they built? Let's make sure we've got the right modules we're implementing. All these different things typically will answer and solve the problems and questions that you're facing, but the key is you need to really take a step back and assess and get an objective, agnostic view of what needs to be done differently. Now, if you'd like to learn more about maybe some of the challenges you're experiencing with your Infor CloudSuite implementation, feel free to reach out. Again, we're not affiliated with Infor. We're not trying to convince you to choose one software over another, but if you're already going down that path and you're trying to get more business value out of it, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to chat with you about how you might get your project back on track, or if you've already implemented CloudSuite, maybe how to get more business value out of the implementation. And one last thing, to learn more about what it takes to be successful in an ERP implementation, be sure to read our ebook called Lessons from 1,000 ERP Implementations. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi there. We're working with a handful, mumbled that.